Hello again, this is Alan Macon, the local history tutor from Knowsley Face, with a continuing series of short videos, local history videos, on the history of Knowsley and Liverpool. Today's short video will look at the history of Kitty Wilkinson, sometimes called the Saint of the Washhouses or the Queen of the Washhouses. We'll look at her life from the origins in Ireland, and she came to Liverpool. The various things she had to face in terms of cholera epidemics, how she overcame them to a certain extent by establishing, with the help of other people and Liverpool City Council, the washhouses, bathhouses in Liverpool, which eventually would spread over the country. We'll talk about her unfortunate death and how she is commemorated in Liverpool in the 21st century, and how the washhouses bring a great deal of memories to Liverpool's population over the last 150 years. So as you can see from the first handout, there's a nice photograph, a famous photograph of Kitty Wilkinson, entitled The Saint of the Washhouses, or sometimes known as the Queen of the Washhouses. So this is Kitty. She lived to be 73. It's fair to say she had a hard life, but this is a famous photograph of her. She was born in 1786 and she died in Liverpool in 1860. So Kitty Wilkinson, as it goes on to say, was born Catherine Seward in 1786 in Derry, Ireland, also known as Londonderry. As a young girl, Catherine was better known as Kitty. Along with her family, took the boat to Liverpool, which was very common in them days, in search of a better life. Liverpool was booming in terms of a population with the docks. Sadly, on the journey to Liverpool, their ship, it goes on to say, got into trouble, and Kitty's father and sister were both drowned and died tragically at sea. When she was 12, Kitty got a job at a cotton mill in Caton. Caton's in central Lancashire, not far from the city of Lancaster, famous for its mills. She married a French sailor by the name of Emmanuel de Monti, with whom she had 2 children. Unfortunately, Emmanuel died at sea, which was very common in them days, sailors. The young Kitty also had to look after their mother, who was now blind and insane. So she certainly had a lot of personal problems. After the death of her mother, Kitty returned to Liverpool, where she made a small income by running a laundry from her home in central Liverpool. She married again a man by the name of Tom Wilkinson. Kitty began to take in children who had lost their mothers. There was a lot of, because of the sheer poverty at the time, a lot of children were left without parents. Then we come to the period of the 1830s to the 1860s. In May 1832, a cholera epidemic raged in Liverpool and eventually the whole of the country, a large part of the world. And it affected Liverpool over several decades, certainly from the 1830s up until the 1860s. Over the following 5 months, in 1832, 15,000 people died from the disease. Cholera hospitals were established in Lime Street in central Liverpool and Toxteth towards the south end of Liverpool. It was apparent that the appalling living conditions endured by the poor were aggravating the situation. And this same situation was basically found all over the big cities in Manchester, Birmingham, London, Newcastle, etc. All the big booming towns of the Victorian period. This was captured in the local press as well as the famous magazines at the time. This one's called A Court for King Cholera, a typical scene to be found in many of the cities and towns in Britain at the time, of the poverty, the overpopulation, the squalor, the dirt heat, children playing in dirt, and the spread of disease, particularly cholera at this time. Though the true cause of the contraction of spread of cholera was not fully understood, even the leading doctors of the time used the phrase a miasma. Miasma just basically meant either bad smells or bad air. That's the best he could estimate how it spread. What they roughly knew was associated with a fear of dirt, which was very common, particularly in the poorer parts of town. Since Kitty possessed the only water boiler on her street, she began to take in the linens of her neighbours and boil clothes and boil linen. Kitty was so diligent in her work and hard-working that every one of her workers survived the epidemic without contracting the disease. So people started to put together the idea of boiling clothes. Then we move on to the establishment of the wash houses. This is a famous photograph This is Upper Frederick Street, and not far from the city centre, the beginning of sort of South Toxteth. This is part of the rebuilt workhouse, Victorian workhouse. So Liverpool City Council decided to erect the first public establishment of baths and wash houses in the country in Upper Frederick Street. Upper Frederick Street still there today, but obviously it's greatly changed, and this particular building had long since disappeared. It was opened on the 28th of May 1842 at a cost of then a considerable cost of £3,222. Kitty and her husband, second husband Thomas, were appointed as its first superintendents. The baths and wash houses would soon spread across the country, across Britain, and indeed, to a certain extent, the whole world. Her work was even also recognised by Queen Victoria, who gifted her a silver teapot. Through many struggles and a relatively long life, Kitty died peacefully on the 11th of November 1860, aged 73, and was buried in St James's Cemetery, the cemetery that surrounds the Anglican Cathedral in the centre of Liverpool. To this day, the headstone's been cared after. Even 150 odd years later, people still clean up the wash house. Clean up the headstone of Kitty Wilkinson. Lots of people in Liverpool have fond memories of wash houses. This is a 1950s photograph. Liverpool women on the way to the wash house, and there could be anywhere in Liverpool. A tradition of council-run laundry services finally closed in more recent times in 1995, ending 153 years of tradition. This was a common sight you would see in Liverpool and large cities even well into the 1950s. Eventually, the life of Kitty Wilkinson was further recognised. A group of called campaigners eventually wanted to honour the Queen of the Wash Houses, Kitty Wilkinson, and for many years they campaigned to put a statue in the large hall of St George's Hall, one of Liverpool's greatest buildings, opened in 1854. If you were to walk in to St George's Hall before 2012, you would have seen empty niches. The other niches were filled by Victorians, largely forgotten, who were entrepreneurs in the Victorian growth of Liverpool. But the group got together, and after many years of campaigning, they eventually got a local sculptor to design this beautiful sculpture. And it's now from 2012, the last 8 years, can be seen in St George's Hall. And I'll just zoom in, hopefully you can get a better view. Beautiful marble. I like the way she's rolling up her sleeves. She was a very hard-working woman. So this is a statue alongside with all the so greats, the Victorian greats of Liverpool, and it dates from 2012. Also in one of Liverpool's other great buildings, the Anglican Cathedral, in the Ladies' Chapel, which was opened in 1910, there's a so-called Ladies' Window. And the Ladies' Window, as you can see, commemorates largely all women who had they saw it as a Christian duty to help the poor. So this is a famous hundreds if not thousands of people walk past this stained glass window in Liverpool Cathedral, and it's just entitled Kitty Wilkinson, Poor Helper to the Poor, 1786 to 1860. So thousands of people every day can walk past this beautiful stained glass window, and it commemorates a lady of very humble beginnings, but who went on to be one of Liverpool's true greats. I'm going to finish there, and as usual, I'm going to say, please leave any comments you wish on the website. Please do. Also, please, can you keep in contact with Knowsley Face and Knowsley Recovery websites for any tips on mental health and well-being. Thank you.